Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 126.
This is the Clay Kane Show.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
Hey y'all, it is Reecie Colbert filling in for Clay Kane on the Clay Kane Show on Sirius XM Urban View. It is Friday, December 17th, 2021. I am very happy to be here with Clay Nation today. I have a great show lined up. We have the Star Jones, the extraordinary, the icon will be joining us later in the hour. We have Iowa Governor candidate Deidre DeJear. She's a Black woman running for governor. It's not just Stacey Abrams out there, y'all. We got to give love to all of the candidates out there. And we have Dr. Cameron Webb, who is from the White House COVID response team, who will be here to talk to us about the Omicron variant, because y'all, I'm confused. I know we all have a little bit of COVID fatigue, pandemic fatigue. We want to enjoy our holidays. And now here comes this doggone Omicron variant. So he's going to be here to break down what the administration's response is, break down what we should be doing for the holidays to protect ourselves. And to just make wise decisions, because, you know, this thing is not going away anytime soon. And so we just have to learn how to navigate in this space that we've been in going on 2 years. And I don't know about y'all, but I can't like mentally wrap my head around having a 2022 like 2021. And now 2021 has been good to me. Don't get me wrong. I had a beautiful baby. I've done a lot of amazing things in terms of my professional career, in terms of what I'm doing in the media space. Thank you, Clay, for having me host your show. But I'm tired. But to be more accurate, I'm motherfucking tired. Okay, are y'all tired? Because I'm tired. I'm tired of quarantining. I'm tired of not being able to see my friends and my family and not be the social butterfly that I love to be, not going to these concerts. Even though these folks is taxing us on these concerts. If you go on the concerts right now, you got money. You got money. Because every concert I've seen, $200+. I'm like, damn, y'all trying to make all your money back in the first round. So shout out to anybody who's paying these prices so that next year, if we open up, I can get them back on the low like how we used to be. But I'm tired. But even as tired as I am, we still have to stay vigilant. So we're going to be talking to Dr. Cameron Webb. And I want to hear from y'all. Y'all know when I'm hosting the show, I like to get a lot of calls. So the number is 866-801-8255. I'm going to keep reminding y'all, especially until y'all call in, and let me know what's on your mind this Good Friday. I'm going to try to keep it light. Clay gave me the direction. He said Fridays are normally a little bit more light. It ain't as heavy. So I'm not going to be all super heavy about stuff. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about something that is really agitating me. It's really agitating me. So this week has been a big week for Vice President Kamala Harris. And she has just done really amazing things. Even last week, let's go back to last week when she had the first ever Maternal Health Day of Action Summit at the White House. That was her brainchild. And she had that. And in particular, she has been a champion in the space of Black maternal mortality. Black women are 3 times more likely to die during childbirth. Black infants have a higher mortality rate. In addition to that, Black women, child, don't send me the hate mail. Black women, okay, experience higher fibroids. 80% of Black women will experience fibroids throughout their life. So that was last week. This week, she announced, along with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, billions of dollars in capital funding with a specific emphasis on minority lending and local credit unions. And I know I've seen some of the little naysayers. Well, did it say only Black? No, it didn't say only Black, okay? No, it does not have Black only in neon signs. That's never going to happen. So what we do to impact the Black community is we target things with laser-like precision so that we get the benefits of them. Let me give you an example. The Farm Bill, the Black Farm Bill, they got $5 billion in the American Rescue Plan. That's being tied up right now in court challenges. And that didn't even say Black, but it used the word underserved or something along those lines. And the white folks out there, spidey senses up and they say, oh, no, that sounds a little bit too much like Black to me. And so that has been held up all year, all summer. Now we're going into the next year from court challenges because the government is not allowed to put Black on something. I know we want it. I get it. I understand it. But they have to be strategic in targeting our communities. And so that's what that, I believe it was $8 billion does. And it is transformative. But yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris, along with the EPA Administrator, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Michael Regan, who I love. I said it yesterday, I said it again today. I love Michael Regan. I love Marsha Fudge, Secretary of HUD Secretary. We really have some superstars in the Biden-Harris administration. And so they laid out a plan, an accelerated plan to replace lead pipes throughout the country. And that's going to start next year, 2022. This isn't some, well, in 10 years, they're starting this right now because we have half of the United States children are exposed to lead water, have traceable amounts of lead in their water. And so this is a crisis. This is a crisis that we've seen. Everybody's known about the crisis in Flint. I don't know now, all of a sudden we starting to solve it. People are like, F them kids, where are my student loans? I'm gonna get to that. But I wanna first, let me just, before I go into my whole spiel about the main thing I want to talk about, which is this disinformation campaign and the way that Black social media is really being manipulated. The narratives are being manipulated. Let me just give you an idea of how really benign, for instance, the announcement was yesterday. It's actually great and transformational, but can you guys play clip 17 and then I'll talk about it after the break or after the clip.
The bottom line is that there is no reason in the 21st century for why people are still exposed to this substance that was poisoning people back in the 18th century. There is no good reason. But here's the truth, and it's a hard truth. Millions of people in our country, many of them children, are still exposed to lead every day. As many as 24 million housing units in our country contain substantial amounts of lead paint. As many as 10 million households get their water through lead pipes and service lines. And so do up to 400,000 schools and childcare facilities. More than half of the children in America who are under the age of 6 are at risk of lead exposure. So it's not right, obviously, and we cannot let this stand any longer. Lead exposure in our nation, we should all agree, is a national emergency, and it is something we can do something about. The action is to direct and coordinate the efforts of local, state, and federal partners to a single goal: to significantly accelerate the removal of lead pipes and paint over the next 10 years, particularly in communities that have historically been left out and left behind.
Okay, so Vice President Harris laid out the stakes. I can remember when we all cared about Flint, Michigan. I can remember when we all cared about the fact that Flint does not have clean water. So it was somewhat surprising when Vice President Kamala Harris, she stepped into the shade room. Now, isn't it funny? Yesterday I said, y'all go talk to Black media. Don't just go to the shade room. And here she is in the shade room. Okay, I didn't know she was gonna go to the shade room. However, even people that get their news from gossip blogs on Instagram still need to be exposed to it at some point. So she stepped into the shade room and the comments were in shambles. They were in shambles. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because what I really want people to understand is that there really is a concerted effort to manipulate the popular thoughts in Black social media. So here's how this works. Vice President Kamala Harris steps into the shade room. She talks about the need to address lead pipe removal and all these other things. All things we all can agree on need to happen, right? And that is a Black issue. I really need us to expand our notion of Black issue as only criminal justice reform. Well, where's the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? It's held up, yes, but lead paint is an issue. Lead pipes, not having clean water, not even having running water, is a Black issue that we should be focused on. And yet, what we had in these comments were just shambles. Like, where you been at? We ain't seen you since we did it, Joe. Or you invisible. Oh, they finally let you out. Little comments like that. Then you have the comments, we don't care about this. We want to hear about student loans. Oh, we don't care about lead paint anymore. We don't care about dirty water no more. Okay, that's news. But here is how this works, because this is what I want you guys to understand. The way that this works is you have bots, trolls, right? They are programmed through algorithms to respond to anything that Vice President Kamala Harris is on. Really Democrats, but particularly Vice President Kamala Harris, right? So they leave these accounts, they leave these comments. And Instagram is really, it's really fertile ground for it, because they can have fake pages, they can have private pages. They usually don't have any posts. And so they all have to do is just put some random Black person's picture up or put an anime picture up, and people fall for it, right? So they leave negative comments, right? Then those comments are boosted. So what happens is there's algorithms that draw likes to negative comments. That's why during the election, for instance, you have negative tweets that go viral, right? Oh, this tweet has 30-something thousand likes on it. Well, it's boosted artificially, right? But what happens is people see, oh, if I say this, if I say, oh, we ain't seen you, homegirl, I'm going to get 3,000 likes on my comment instead of getting 2 likes. So let me say that. So then what you have is you have a bunch of people. So then you have this inauthentic traffic, right? And then you have real people. I'm not going to deny that there aren't real people that say, oh, okay, well, let me leave this kind of comment. And to be fair, there are some people who really might be legitimately, or not legitimately, but authentically or sincerely pissed off or whatever. But then they leave comments, and then their comments get more likes. And so what happens is, but when you go to a social media page, whether it's a tweet or whether it's Instagram or Facebook, the comments that have the most likes get the most visibility. So then people looking at the comments think, well, damn, everybody can't stand Kamala. Nobody likes her. So this is the issue that we have, where it's not authentic, because then people get the idea that, well, nobody really likes her. So then they jump on the bandwagon. And so it just goes in this circle and in this circle. You say negative things, they get boosted. So people say negative things so they can get a boost. And then people think that everybody thinks negative things because their negative things are getting boosted. It's the same where people say, we haven't seen you. Well, what are you interacting with? Are you interacting with Vice President Kamala Harris's posts, or with Democratic posts, or with positive things? Or are you interacting with negative things? If you don't like a post, then the algorithm is going to say, this is not important to you. You're not going to see it. So we have to understand the ways in which our social media is manipulated, the way that our group thought, our supposed narratives are manipulated. It's not authentic. So I say that to say is, number one, don't just go by what the comments say. Don't think that that's the common theme. If you look at, like, for instance, the data shows that Vice President Kamala Harris has 86% approval with Black people and with Democrats. But if you go to the shade room comments, she got 0% approval. So there's a disconnect. That's why you can't take this stuff too seriously. And that's why if you do like some of the stuff, then go ahead and interact with it. Like it, leave a comment. Don't be discouraged, because the other part about it is they want to discourage you from interacting with it. They want to discourage you from, if you do like something, from saying things. I don't want to get dragged, so I'm not going to say nothing. So I want you guys to call in and tell me your thoughts. Have you seen social media traffic that's been like, ooh, Chad, okay, I'm scared. I'm scared. Don't nobody like Kamala, or don't nobody like the Democrats, don't nobody like Joe, whoever. And that scares me. And, have you been discouraged from leaving comments, or do you like, okay, well, let me go ahead and chime in. Let me back her up. I'm curious which side you're on. The number is 866-801-8255. Let's go to a caller. We have Gary and Raleigh. Hey, Gary, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Reecie, what's up?
Hey.
Hey, love you. Love you. Clay's my boy. We both from West Philly. And I love when you're on the show. I want you to keep that fire. I love the language. I love the cussing these motherfuckers out. And I'm not mad about it. I love when you bring that heat. I love that shit. That's all language. As far as the comments with Kamala Harris, and all the negativity surrounding her, I don't give a fuck about that. These people going to do what they going to do. And any of these other the things that they really need to be commenting on is Killer Kyle out here on these little tours that he's doing with the rest of these people. He's now a celebrity. Ain't nobody got nothing to say about that shit.
Hello.
About all that shit that he's doing. You understand what I'm saying? But they want to jump on Ms. Harris about buying some little, what the fuck she buy? Some trinkets or some bullshit? And they want to make some noise about that shit out of her own pocket. I don't give a fuck about these motherfuckers. So you just keep on doing what you're doing. Love you.
Love you, Gary. Thank you for that energy. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, Gary, we need that fire. I mean, isn't it a trip how you have somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse who's being celebrated, who is being, now a celebrity. I mean, he's headlining some conservative thing. And, the white nationalists, don't put it like that would be nice. They know how to rally behind their folks. Even they super problematic ones, a whole ass killer is getting all these fancy raising $1 million on GoFundMe, all kind of stuff. But then you have the Black woman who is a historic candidate, vice president, who's really doing amazing things. I laid out lead pipes, capital funding, Black maternal mortality. That's just 3. I mean, we can go to child care tax credits. We can go to the American Rescue Plan. There are a lot of things that I can go into. The fact that we've closed the gap in terms of racial equity when it comes to COVID vaccines. Vice President Kamala Harris championed that. There's so many things that I can go through, and she continually gets dragged. But like I said, don't be mistaken. Just because she's getting dragged on social media doesn't mean that her ratings are that low. It's because social media is driving this narrative to try to make the narrative a reality. Okay, let's go to Marcus in Atlanta. Hey, Marcus, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Listen, I appreciate you highlighting this topic because I was just talking about it with my wife last night. So she was talking about how she was in communication with one of her coworkers who is a PhD and who is Madam Vice President's sorority sister. And she was telling me about how her colleague said, you know what, I'm really not feeling, Vice President Harris for this. And I said, hold on a second. Why is she not feeling her? I was like, the vice president, the current vice president is not doing anything that any other vice president prior to her has not done at this point in their administration. She's doing exactly. She's like, well, why is she not in the process? Because she's the vice president, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, when have you ever seen the vice president out ahead of the president? I'm like, y'all, where are y'all getting this from? And you highlighted social media and how it's been driven, and that has to be where it's coming from. And so I pushed back on it. Of course, I was like, y'all are being so unfair to another Black woman simply because of the bullshit you're seeing on social media that's being propagated by white folks. Let's just keep it real.
Yeah. And by some Black people too who are chaos agents, because there is a whole industry behind it. People don't understand there's profit motive behind these attacks. You get higher levels of engagement. For instance, with YouTube, you get higher YouTube revenue if you put out negative content that people respond to. Unfortunately, negative content gets more clicks, gets more engagement, and then you get to go to sponsors and say, look, I get 12 million impressions a month and I have a 6% engagement rate, so pay me more money. But Marcus, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, what's really amazing is that people don't have any real substantive issue with Vice President Kamala Harris. Like there's no policy issue here. It's really just people regurgitating these smears and attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris. So thank you for your call, Marcus. You take care. All right, we're gonna go to David in DC, first time caller. Hey, David.
Hey, Reecie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Listen, I agree with all the points that you're making about Kamala Harris, but I think that where we part ways on our opinion is that, in my estimation, she's the most high-profile vice president of this era. And so when we say she's not doing anything any different than other vice presidents have done, I think that you're right. But I think that the difference is that she's probably the most popular vice president that we've ever had prior to her being vice president. So for that reason, it's a disappointment not to see her profile as large as we saw it before. Like, I remember when she launched her campaign, do you remember that was on Martin Luther King Day? I remember it very vividly. It was flawless. I'm like, she is the bomb, right? But, so when we say she stepped back and now she is what every other vice president is, I think there's a level of disappointment that comes with that just because she's not doing what we're used to her doing anymore.
Right. I mean, I think that I agree with you in the sense that we want to see more from her. I think part of that, as I alluded to earlier, or actually explicitly stated earlier, is the way that we interact with stories about her. For instance, if you don't interact with stories about her on social media, for instance, if you don't like them, if you don't retweet them, if you don't comment on them, then the algorithm is going to say that you don't care about those stories. So even if you do follow Vice President, she has her Kamala Harris page, she has her VP page on all of the different social media platforms. Even if you follow it, but if you don't interact with it, then the algorithms are not going to show you that content. They're going to show you, if you're into sports or if you're into cooking or travel or whatever, they're going to show you those things. For me, I'm telling you one thing, when I go on Instagram, all I see on my Explore page is hair weave, the tutorials and stuff. I don't even, comment on the stuff, but I can't help but look at it when it's on there and somebody getting a little haircut or whatever. I can't help but look at it. And that couldn't be further away from what my actual interests are, but that's what my Explore page is thinking that I want to see. And so part of it is how we interact with things and being able to see what she's putting out there. And part of it is the fact that the media wants to cover bullshit. I mean, her Bluetooth, her Bluetooth, whether she uses Bluetooth or not, was headline news. I mean, it made all this news. And the very next day, when she held the Maternal Health Day of Action, a historic first time ever inaugural summit, it got crickets. Or when she met with a group of Black women, activists and organizers, people who have the largest Black women civic organizations, met with her at the White House, it got crickets. Or when she met with the HBCU was it the Divine Nine? I think it was the Divine Nine president, crickets. So the media has an appetite for bullshit. So that's why we continue to only see bullshit instead of seeing her, who has done 500 events at this point. So we have to challenge ourselves to make sure that we're doing our part to see what she's up to and interacting with those things so that people can say, okay, well, if I do put out something good about Kamala, it's going to get clicks too. So maybe I should put more of that stuff out. But thank you, David. We have one more caller and get to before the break, and then Star Jones. Lauren from Alabama, how are you doing, girl?
Hey, Reecie, our first time caller.
First time caller, yes.
Yeah, and I love you. Follow you on Twitter. I wanted to say that I definitely agree with you with everything you were talking about Vice President Harris, and it really frustrates me, and I want to get your thoughts on it as well, is that people just don't have a good civic understanding of how American legislative process works. I'm like, what do you want Vice President Harris to do? She's not on your local city council. She's not on the county commission. She's not on your school board, and you're not even participating in those things. She's doing her damn job, and she's doing it very well. But people that complain about her aren't trying to do anything locally to make things better at the grassroots level for themselves.
I agree. I think there is a lack of civics understanding. For instance, the vice president does not sign executive orders. So like when people say it's a good day for President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to sign to cancel that, she can't do that. What the hell are you looking at her for? She ain't got no control over that. You know what I'm saying? So, and I saw somebody, there was a hit piece of the New York Post. I think, yeah, the New York Post is like the right wing one. That one stated that she should have spoken on crime when she was in Brooklyn. She was there to talk about the infrastructure package. What she got to do with crime? Y'all need to talk to Bill de Blasio. You know, you need to talk with your local commissioners. So I think that people don't understand that there are three co-equal branches of the government. The Congress is its own co-equal branch of government. She doesn't have power over Congress. She breaks ties, but she's not the Senate Majority Leader. Chuck Schumer needs to do his job. She's not the Speaker of the House. And she's not over the Supreme Court, the John Roberts right wing Supreme Court. So people gotta understand what's in her wheelhouse. She does a massive amount of advocacy. And what we're seeing, I think the White House is doing a better job at, is actually highlighting the connection between her legislation that she sponsored in the Senate that is now incorporating itself into the different legislation that the Dems are passing. For instance, the Water Justice Act was something that she proposed in the Senate to eradicate lead pipes. So we're seeing them connect the dots, but she's an advocate. She is a leader, but she does not have her own autonomous control. So Lauren, thank you so much for your call. We're going to head to a break. And then when we come back, we're going to have the Star Jones joining us. We'll be right back.
This is the Clay Kane Show on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126. Now return to the Clay Kane Show on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126.
Welcome back to the Clay Kane Show. It's your girl, Reecie Colbert, filling in for Clay. That is Diamonds Are Forever by Shirley Bassey. This came out on this day in 1971. We are joined. I am so honored and pleased and happy and thrilled to be joined by the Star Jones. You all know her from The View, as well as being an acclaimed novelist, a brilliant lawyer, television personality, producer, social activist, fashion designer. She is a multi-hyphenate. She is queen of all things. And I'm so thrilled to have her. And she happens to be Boss Baby's godmama. So welcome to the show, Star.
Absolutely, Reece. I was about to say you better put in Boss Baby Godmother, but as our vice president pointed out, she said co-godmother, so I do need to stay in my lane.
That's true.
I'm the co-godmother. She does like me to make sure that I acknowledge that she is also godmother.
I love it. I love it. And listen, Clay audience, Star has graciously agreed to take some calls if you want to call in and show your love for the Star Jones, 866-801-8255. But before we get to all that, I got some things I got to talk to you about. So you have been doing some just really incredible things. As I said, you're known for being a brilliant lawyer, a legal mind, which we know we need to talk a little bit about that but you're passionate about women and women. And they always drag me because I say woman instead of woman. So I'm working on women empowerment and inclusion. And you're in high demand. I mean, you were a featured moderator and speaker at the G20. I was like, okay, look at Star. At the Global Forum, Women's Forum and meeting in Paris. So talk a bit about what you're up to, your advocacy, the causes and your initiatives that you're doing right now.
I'm so glad that you asked, Reece, because I am a part of the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society. And it's an international forum of women's voices that really and truly are committed to women's empowerment, women's equality, focused on women entrepreneurs, and literally all the things that are impacting on our world from a woman's perspective. But I'm excited to have been a part of the editorial board for several years now. And obviously I bring diversity and inclusiveness to that board. But I had the opportunity, as you mentioned, to moderate a urban planning session with the mayor of Milan, as well as several other international leaders in Milan for the preamble to the G20. And the interesting part about it is most people wouldn't think, well, Star is not an expert in urban planning, but I am an expert when it comes to women's inclusiveness in all aspects of society. And so we had the opportunity to really examine what it looks like when we are inclusive, not just of genders, but of different religions, different sexual orientations, in urban planning and other areas of society. So that was the one in Italy. And then I flipped the script and went over to Paris and really examined what leadership looks like, especially coming out of the COVID pandemic. So these are some of the projects that I am passionate about, because I think that women deserve a seat at the table of every table of influence. So if we're talking about government, I want us seated at that table. If we're talking about business, we're seated at that table. We're talking about climate, we are leaders at that table. And so this is sort of my passion. It always has been my passion. And to be able to, sort of do it on a world stage is something I'm very honored to do.
And you're extraordinary at it. And what I really love is just the range that you display, but also just the range that it shows that women have, particularly Black women. I mean, they always call us in for, certain topics, the traditionally what people consider to be the Black topics, right?
Yes,
but infrastructure, urban planning is not one of them. And a lot of times we don't really get the mic to talk about our experiences. So talk a little bit about just how Black women have range.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can do anything and everything. We have been astronauts. We are teachers of the next generation. We are leaders in government, in business. I have a good girlfriend who is the president of the damn Dallas Mavericks. Okay. So we can do sports. We can do entertainment. Everybody from Oprah to Beyonce in entertainment, but also look at Shonda Rhimes and you look at Suzanne DePass, and you look at just the range of entertainment, and then just look at entrepreneurship.
Right.
Look at women who are creating businesses across our nation. Look at business leaders, Fortune 500 company leaders. We don't have as many as we need to have, or we should have, but those leaders have stepped into leadership role. And then, of course, the single most powerful woman in the United States and across the globe, I would argue, is the Vice President of the United States. And one, she's a woman, and two, she's a woman of color.
Right.
And so that is so clear that we have range, that we can sit at any table. And I just encourage young women to not be limited by somebody else's expectations of you. I have always ascribed to the attitude that I'm the author of the only dictionary that defines me.
Hello.
And what I mean by that, and I should also add editor, because you may change throughout your entire professional career, because circumstances change. And some successes will be wonderful, but some setbacks will also help you to get you to the next level. I've always said that a setback is simply a setup to the next success. And for me, I've lived my life that way. And so I want other young women, all by generations that are coming behind me, because I feel like I'm Auntie Star all the time, Reecie. But I want other women to feel that confident. And then I steal this from my sister, Donna Brazil, the very brilliant political operative and media expert. But Donna always says, when we get that seat at the table, when we have our seat, remember to scooch over and make room for somebody else. And I think that is so important, because oftentimes we get there, but we think that there's only room for one, and there's not. There's room for many. And I should tell you, since I know you've been talking about this, that's really one of the things that I admire about Vice President Harris. I never know what I want to call her, Vice President, former senator, colleague, friend, Mamala, but Vice President Harris, she really is the champion of bringing other women along. And that's something that, we share. That is our common mission.
Absolutely. And you 100% walk the walk in that, because the way that we join forces is you saw this little loudmouth Black girl on Twitter who was dragging people, but who was ride or die for
Right.
then
There you
Senator
go.
Kamala Harris. And you said, let's get together. Let's have a meeting of the minds. And so we did a 90-minute discussion, credentials, not cosmetics, where we made the case. This was in June 2020 that Vice President Kamala Harris needs to be, well, then Senator Kamala Harris needs to be the vice presidential nominee. And so you scooch over and you always have celebrated me and said my name in rooms where I'm not in. So I bow down to you. I salute you for that. I appreciate you so much for that. But I want you to talk, because you did mention Vice President Kamala Harris, and that is a love that we have in common. So many people know her. And we talked a little bit about earlier in the show about the kind of attacks that she gets. But you have just a unique perspective because you know her as a human being, as a friend, as a wife, and as a mother. Can you tell us a little bit about VP the person that people are just missing? There's this caricature that has been manufactured, which is so completely ridiculous. But you know the real VP. We're gonna call her Kamala just for the sake of saying you know the real Kamala. You know the real Vice President Kamala. So just give the audience a little bit of an idea of what you can tell us about her.
Well, first, Reecie, let me just step back for just a second and say, as my late mother had told me then and would say right now, if she were able to hear this program, you don't give people credit for things they're supposed to do. So you don't ever need to give me credit for opening the door for another young sister, ever. I don't need credit for that. That's something that I'm supposed to do. That is a part of my DNA. And quite frankly, women that don't have it a part of their DNA, I got a problem with. Okay,
I heard that.
So I walk in the door knowing that somebody did the same thing for me. So that's my obligation to do it for other young women who are doing their thing and really have a voice that needs to be heard. So we'll start with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's in keeping with my relationship with our vice president, because that's just the kind of person she is.
Mm-hmm.
And what you mentioned about me, quote, saying your name in rooms you're not in, that's called sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do mentorship, but sponsorship is very important also in this dynamic, so that when you're not in a room, there's somebody in there that says, well, you know what, that I might not be right for that, but my girl is really good on that.
Right.
She could handle that job. She could take on that project. She could run for that office. Those are the kinds of things that really move the needle forward. And that's my friend, Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Because throughout her entire career, and I get verklempt. As a matter of fact, most of y'all laugh at me because I get to the point where it's hard for me not to cry every time I start to talk about it.
I know that is your thing.
And y'all pick on me, and I don't really care because it is extremely emotional for me to know that someone that I've known for 30 years, as a colleague and a friend, and we go back to when she pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority at Howard University. I was national vice president of Alpha Kappa Alpha and actually wrote the pledge program that she and her Lion sisters pledged under.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we go way back. Okay.
Yes.
But over the course of those years, she watched me. I watched her. She was a prosecutor on the West Coast, as everybody is aware of. I was a prosecutor on the East Coast. Oftentimes, we'd be one of very few Black women in the room when it came to lead prosecutors. She led an office. I was in the trial trenches as a lead prosecutor. So we had some things in common. But the one thing that she always had, something extra special, she took for the people to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
We both have laughed, she and I, about that whole concept of walking into a courtroom and saying Kamala Harris for the people or Star Jones for the people. But she took it to a whole nother level, Reecie.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I was fighting for victims of crime.
Mm-hmm.
She thought her mission back then was to fight for the voiceless.
Mm-hmm.
That was who she was from the beginning. That is the person that I know. And she has been consistent with that throughout her entire career. Throughout her career as attorney general, well, state's attorney and then attorney general. Okay, and then United States Senator, and now as Vice President. And I think of the things that she has accomplished already. You want to know what I feel for her? I feel such pride.
Yeah.
I feel such pride every time. Something as silly, and I'm happy to share this. Something as silly as going to the White House and having to be tested for COVID. As everybody can imagine, if you're going to go to the White House and you're going to be anywhere in the campus, as they call it, you got to get tested. But you got to get tested because you're going to be in close proximity with the Vice President of the United States. Not your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Not your friend of 30 years. Not your soror. The Vice President of the United States. And it impacts on the world.
Yeah.
Who she is. How healthy she is. That she is safe. Because any given moment, she's going to be called on by the president to give counsel for something that could change the course of every human being's life in the United States and around our world. Do you know the impact of that?
Yeah, that's deep.
So whenever I hear anybody questioning anything about the vice president, I go, do you know the impact of what being the number 2 is? That's my friend. That's the Vice President of the United States. That's the person that makes me cry every time I think about the fact that she has gotten there and takes each and every one of us with her each and every single day. Every piece of policy that has come out of the Biden-Harris administration, every single piece, no exception, that has an impact on women, on children, on people of color, on people with different abilities or disabilities, on the LGBTQ community. Every single policy has had her fingerprints on it. Every single one.
Absolutely.
The president will tell you that. And anybody with a fair assessment of her record will tell you that. If she's not in those rooms, Reecie, those things don't happen. I want you to hear what I just said.
Say it again for the people.
She's not in those rooms. Those things don't happen.
Like the omnibus bills, right?
100%. The fact that Black maternal health has never even really been discussed. Okay? Until she, along with, again, Sora Alma Adams, again, Sora Lauren Underwood, put those things on the front burner. Again, it goes back to what I just said. If she's not in the room, those things don't happen.
Absolutely.
Okay? We think about the fact that voting rights is on the front burner. Well, first of all, it shouldn't be on the damn front burner. It should be a fait accompli. But the fact that it's not, but it's on the front burner, is because she's in the room.
Right. Right.
And the president, who I fondly think of as Uncle Joe, and I always will, because I think of my favorite uncles. But when the president makes it a priority, that's because his governing partner, which is what he calls her, his governing partner, says, this is something we need to be working on. And he goes, you darn right. I mean, it's because she's in the room.
Yes.
So the impact of my relationship with her on me is I'm here to support 1,000%.
Yes.
To be ride or die, even though neither one of us is gonna die. We're not
doing that. We're not. But we're gonna ride. We're gonna ride to the wheels fall off. Yeah.
But what I am saying to you is, this is an unprecedented moment in our lives, and I am so proud. So proud, as well as our ancestors. Fannie Lou Hamer's proud. Sojourner Truth is proud. Coretta Scott King is proud. Betty Shabazz is proud. Shirley Chisholm is proud. Thurgood Marshall is proud. They proud.
Yes.
They're proud that she's sitting in that chair, and I support her 100%.
I know you do. I know you do. And I have a caller who wants to respond to your comment. But before I get to, I just have to real quick. Can you just please shut people down? You've known her for 30 years. Can you please shut people down who try to say that she just started claiming Black, or she claims Black when it's convenient for her, and she called herself this, that, and the other. Can you please just be clear? Is Vice President Kamala Harris a proud Black woman?
Okay, I'm just going to say 2 words. Alpha chapter. Okay? So for those of you who are not Greek, I'm going to say 2 words again. Alpha chapter. Let me also add 2 more words. Howard University.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did she pick a traditional HBCU, she pledged the first Black woman's fraternal organization,
mm-hmm.
created and founded by Black women.
Right.
At the historical Alpha chapter. Okay? That in and of itself takes her to a whole nother blickety black level. So just so you're very clear about that. If you knew anything about Greek life, you would know that is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
I'm not going to tell y'all no secrets.
No,
that is not an easy thing to do. That's number 1. Number 2, she doesn't have to wear being Black on her sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
Because she wakes up Black every day. She go to sleep Black every night.
Mm-hmm.
She wakes up in the middle of the night knowing that she's Black. And for anybody who thinks she doesn't, the world would remind her every single day.
And
she
they
is
do.
Black. She is Indian. She is a brown woman of color. She takes being an advocate so darn seriously. I cannot tell you how seriously she takes it. I get teased about being very much more an Upper East Side Jewish woman, okay? Because that can be me sometime.
Mm-hmm.
I admit it. Kamala Harris always 24/7 represents not just her, but all women.
Mm-hmm.
And she recognizes what being a brown woman does. I'm telling you and I feel like I need to reject the premise of the question, to be honest with you, because she doesn't have to prove her Blackness.
No.
And anybody who's out there who questions her Blackness, then you need to question your own Blackness. Because how do you identify being Black? I identify being Black as it's a state of being, not just a state of mind, babe. It is who we are. And for those of us who are in the trenches every single day, even if you forget you Black, the world will remind you.
Hello. I'm known on this show for saying that everybody gets their N-word wake-up call. So the Clay Kane listeners know what that means. Okay, we only got a couple more minutes left. I want to go to Segun in Maryland. She has a comment for you, Star. Hey, Segun, welcome to the show.
Hi, Segun.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Segun is a guy, obviously. Great job filling up for Clay Kane show, Reecie, and Star, I can't even imagine. I can't believe I'm actually talking to you. I watched you all through the 90s in college, so great job. There was one comment you made when you mentioned, Kamala said, when we get a seat at the table, we have to scoot over. That's perfectly what I think she's doing. When I see the relationship with the lady in PG County Executive, also Brooks, as well as Lauren Underwood, it almost looks like she's almost helping other people come along. And that's why I get very disappointed when I speak to the young people in their 20s. They don't seem to understand what's going on. They mounting off from student loans, almost like they were spoiled to have Obama as the president, and now they don't seem to understand the impact. I mean, all through the 90s in college, it was a big deal to have one representative who was actually a person of color. And now they don't seem to understand the impact. So my question to you is, how can we, talk to these young people? I mean, in terms of, so they understand the impact and not mouth off all this stuff about student loans. What has she done for us? We don't see her. And that is my question. Thank you for taking my call again.
Thank you.
And sorry, before you do that, we only have 3 minutes left. So before you answer, tell people how they can keep up with you. And then that way we make sure we get that in before we get cut off.
That is so thoughtful of you. You just keep up with me with Star Jones ESQ on all social media platforms, and I will always fill you in. But I do want to just pick up on what Segun said, because I think he has really put his finger on one of the issues, and I'm being mindful of the time, Reecie. But I'd be remiss if I just did not talk about how important it is to understand the impact. He used that word, the impact of the time that we're living in.
Right.
that this week I was in Washington and I had the opportunity to spend some time with the vice president. My husband and I went to go and see her. That's the first time we had the opportunity to do it. And I would like to just set the stage. Obviously I'm not going to talk about our personal conversation, but let me just set the stage. When you come to the White House complex, the executive office building is on one side, the White House is on the other, and there's that walking area in between. They're bulletproof cars, which is where the vice president parks and gets in and out of her cars all throughout the day, wherever she has to go. And then there's a very small walkway in the West Wing when you go into the lobby, the greeting or the reception area. And then there's her office, and then there's the pathway to the Oval Office. To walk into her office and see that she has put her own special touches on it with the right colors and that beautiful painting of Thurgood Marshall and bringing in Black artists and women artists into that room. And when she got up to say something to me and she went behind her desk, it took everything in me not to fall apart.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because there have been 40 some odd men who sat at that desk. Nobody looks anything like her at all.
Yeah.
They took me into the executive
office. We got 30 seconds.
I know. They took me into the executive office, and I want you to know it impacted on my spirit because she's the right person at the right time. That's what you need to convince people of.
Absolutely. Star, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to have you back next time I host too, or one of the future times.
Good enough. I can talk about Kamala all day.
I know. We'll be right back. Clay Kane Show, Sirius XM Urban View. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Clay Kane Show on Sirius XM Urban View. It is Reecie Colbert filling in for Clay Kane. Hey, Clay Nation. Y'all got me yesterday. Y'all got me today. I hope you are enjoying the show. As usual, call in 866-801-8255. How fabulous was Star Jones? Isn't she fabulous? Isn't she wonderful? Let me tell y'all, that's my girl. I love her to death. She is so down to earth and like the real deal. Okay. Yes, she's an icon. Yes, she's had this incredibly long, successful career, but she is really a down home sister, like for real, for real. So I love her. I appreciate her for coming on the show. I've gotten a lot of comments on Twitter. You guys approved of the conversation, but I got to go to the comments. I got to go to the callers. We are going to be joined in a short while from Dr. Cameron Webb. He's with the White House COVID response team. He's going to be talking to us about the Omicron variant. We're going to be joined by Iowa gubernatorial candidate Deidre DeJear. She's a Black woman running. It's not just Stacey Abrams. We love her too, but we're going to talk to her. But before we get to that, let's get to a few calls, starting with Erica in DC. Hey, Erica, thank you for holding. You've been holding for a while. Thank you. What's your comment?
Well, thank you, Reecie. It's so good to hear you on the Clay Kane Show, killing it like always, sis.
Girl, Erica Savage Wilson.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, girl. How you doing, girl?
Oh my gosh, I had to call and support our good sis Reecie, who was out on the front line for our historic Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. And the disinformation campaign. And Reecie, when you were discussing earlier the social media manipulation formula, I hope people will listen to the replay of that, because what infuriates me about that is that there's such a giving away of the mind, and people giving away their own intellectual capacity to these celebratory kind of entertainment jeering sites. And there's nothing wrong with entertaining those sites for what they are. It's entertainment. But when you're talking about substance, when you're talking about the things that impact us, the environment, the quality of water, all the things that you mentioned, voting rights, to see those snapshots of comments where people, bots or actual individuals, were saying, I hadn't seen you, girl. First of all, that's not a girl. That is a full grown woman, and she is our vice president as well. So that level of addressing is bothersome to me. But then to see where it comes from also says that we've got to raise our level of consciousness and really delineate between what is entertainment and what is real. Where are you being, girl? Like, excuse me, this is not your neighbor. This is a person that is serving a high level of government and has a very impressive portfolio. So if you want to know what our Madam Vice President Kamala Harris is doing, you could either go over to Reese's Twitter page, or you could actually go on the White House site and find out for oneself. So thank you for the conversation that you continue to have, and also tying in the disinformation that people are really buying into, whether they realize it or not. It's really important that you continue to keep this front of page for all of us, front of mind for all of us. And I really, really thank you for what you're doing in those two most important areas, Reecie.
Oh, thank you so much, Erica. I appreciate you. And listen, for the Clay Nation audience, I'm going to tell you this. Erica Savage Wilson is my girl, my sis. I love her. And she has a new podcast coming out called The Reframed Brain in 2022. So we're going to have her next time I get a chance to host, whenever that's going to be. I'm definitely going to have Erica on here. Hopefully she can co-host with me. But at a minimum, I'm going to have you on the show to plug your podcast and tell us about your journey with the Reframed Brain. So thank you so much, Erica, for calling in. I love you.
I love you more, sis. I love you, boss baby. And listen, continue to do well. Shout out to Clay Nation and the Clay Cane. Thank you so much, sis. Be well.
You too. Okay, y'all, we got a couple minutes before Dr. Cameron Webb joins. And guess what? He was a big hit last time, a big hit, or the time before. Everybody loved Daddy Carl. So, Daddy Carl is back. Hey, Pops. How you doing?
Hey, Reese. Man, I'm alive and well. I can't complain. Now, Reese, I gotta say some stuff. First of all, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Secondly, Star Jones is a friggin' superstar.
Yes, she is.
And thirdly, a couple things I want to comment about. I think we need to talk more about the Supreme Court and how dangerous this Supreme Court actually is. I think those 6 justices on the Supreme Court, and you know the kangaroo justices, the Republican assholes I'm talking about, are the most dangerous people in the world and in America, because they let anything go, no matter what it is, treachery, the abortion laws down in Texas, police brutality, anything is acceptable to them because they've mixed their personal opinions and their personal ideology in. And for the younger people who don't understand the significance of that, I'm going to put it in an apocalyptic way. I binge watched Hannah last night, the series on Netflix. It's about young people that are growing up and the government is targeting them. So for the young people, their asses is going to be in the Hunger Game if they don't get it. Running around trashing Kamala like she's insignificant, which is not the case. She is doing what she's supposed to do. And, you know, for us who realize how serious it is, Reece, and we'll talk about that more this weekend, but there's a storm going on right now. Kamala has weathered all the storms she's ever been in. She's going to weather this one. So we just have to take a deep breath. And for those who are trashing her outreach, those aren't going to be the people that are voting for their best interest anyway. Those are going to be the folks that are voting for third-party candidates. Or, well, I didn't vote because I didn't trust her, or whatever the case may be. So the Supreme Court civics lessons really need to be taught to these young people. Otherwise, they're going to the Hunger Games, because these Republicans get a hold of things the way they're planning on doing, it's going to be really bad. So,
yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. You know, Democrats don't tend to vote based on the courts. Now, the Supreme Court is a lost cause. Like, it's gone for a generation, because Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh, I mean, they're pretty young. And if history is any kind of, indicator, these justices are going to be on it for the next 30 years. Ava is going to be hopefully married off somewhere and, living a fabulous life. But by the time we get a chance to flip the court. So that's a done deal. But these circuit court judges, these lower level courts are still in play. And President Biden has really been reshaping the courts in terms of the kinds of nominees he's putting forth. But we also have to understand, too, for the midterms, the stakes are really high. And I'm wondering what you always have your ear to the ground, particularly in Texas. What's your take on just what's happening in Texas right now with the gerrymandering? I mean, I just saw today or yesterday, which is appalling, the Texas GOP redistricting map, which just passed, has 40% of the population, that's the white population, controls 60% of the districts. 39% of Hispanics control 18% of the districts, and 12% of the Black population controls 0% of the population. So these numbers are appalling. But hold that thought, Pops. I got to bring in Dr. Cameron Webb, but stay on the line for me. And then when we're done, I want to bring you back just to talk about. Okay, Clay Kane listeners, listen, we have a treat. We are all worried about or sick about, I don't know which one, you pick your poison, about this Omicron variant. COVID-19 is still with us. We have Dr. Cameron Webb, who is of the White House COVID response. Let me give you a little bit of background about him. First of all, he is a young Black man. We celebrate Black doctors on the Clay Kane Show. Dr. Cameron Webb, you guys can't see him, but I can see him, currently serves as senior policy advisor for the equity on the White House COVID-19 response team. Previously, Dr. Webb was an assistant professor of medicine and public health sciences and director of health policy and equity at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. A general internist, Dr. Webb has worked clinically in the university's COVID unit since the beginning of the pandemic. Additionally, he is the founding director of the UVA's Health Equity, Law, and Policy Research Helper Laboratory and is a core faculty member at the university's Equity Center, an initiative for the redress of inequity through community-engaged scholarship. Prior to joining the faculty at UVA, Dr. Webb spent a year at the 2016 House Fellow in the Obama-Biden administration Office of Cabinet Affairs, where he served on the My Brother's Keeper Task Force and the White House healthcare team. Born and raised Virginian, Dr. Webb received his BA from the University of Virginia, his MD from Wake Forest School of Medicine, and his JD from Loyola University, Chicago School of Law. That was a mouthful, but Dr. Webb has the credentials to be here to talk to us about the Omicron variant. Dr. Webb, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So, listen, I talked about this earlier. I think a lot of us have COVID fatigue, but we're still really in the midst of things. So can you just give the audience, we've been hearing conflicting messages about, the transmissibility and the severity of Omicron, if it's worse or better than Delta. I wouldn't say better, but worse or less severe. So just give us an idea of where we are right now as it stands today with the Omicron variant in the United States.
Well, I want to start off by saying I feel you on the COVID fatigue. I'm an internal medicine doc, so I work in the hospital on the COVID unit most of the time when I'm there, have been doing so since last April. And then for my wife, she's an emergency doctor, so she's taking care of patients when they come in, not knowing if the person she's interacting with has COVID or not. That's been the case for over a year and a half now. So that's been incredibly tiring. And then, also having two young kids, that fatigue of wondering and worrying about them, it sets in. So when we get to Omicron and we learn that this is a new variant of concern, it's got all these mutations, all these changes. The first thing that we've learned, since it was first identified right around Thanksgiving, is that it does seem to be more transmissible. It's moving pretty quickly in different parts of the world. So we've seen it in parts of South Africa. Certainly it's moving pretty quickly. Thousands of cases there. In the UK, moving really quickly. And they're thinking in the next 2 to 4 weeks, it'll be the dominant variant. And now here in the United States, it's the first variant that's actually chipped away at that. It was 99.9% of cases of COVID here in the US, where Delta, now 3% in just a few short weeks are now the Omicron variant. And that's only going to grow. So transmissibility, I think we can safely say it looks like it moves a little bit faster than Delta. And then on severity, I think that the jury's still out on that. It's tough to say that it's less severe because remember, COVID is different in everybody. We do hope that it's less severe. Certainly, from a clinical perspective, I hope it's less severe. But I can't count my eggs before they hatch on that. At the end of the day, if it's more transmissible and you have a lot of people having moderate illness, that's a lot of kids missing school, a lot of people missing work, a lot of communities that are negatively impacted, and still a lot of hospitals that are very full. So it's still very bad if you have really high transmission there. So you have to be really vigilant. We have to do everything we can to stop its spread. So one thing we have learned, just to wrap it up here, is we've learned that our vaccines seem to still be effective. So I got my 2 COVID shots, and then I got my booster. When you have that booster shot, you have good levels of circulating antibodies that can protect you from even symptomatic illness, which is good news. My wife also has her boosters. Our kids, they both got their 2 shots, and now they're fully vaccinated. They're 6 and 10, so they're fully vaccinated. They should have good protection as well. So everybody should just be asking the question of what's the highest level of protection I can have right now, and do I have it? And if you do, then you're in a pretty good spot when it comes to Omicron.
So here's the thing. There are some people that have vaccine fatigue. They're like, okay, hold on. You had to drag me kicking and screaming to get the first shot, the second shot, and now you're talking about boosters, and now you're talking about you might have to boost again. What do you say to people who are just tired of the kind of the hamster wheel of vaccines? I'm pro-vaccine, be clear. I'm boosted up. I got a flu shot, everything. Everybody in my household is as well. But what will you say to those who are thinking like, I don't want this to become a way of life of constantly having to get another shot and another shot and another shot?
I would say I agree with you. I don't like shots. I don't like going to get shots. I don't know many people who do. And certainly, as healthcare providers, we certainly have to get those shots a little more frequently in terms of our hepatitis B vaccines and, all the other, vaccines that we have to make sure we're up to date with. I think that nobody wants to get all these shots. But more than that, we want to not only survive, but thrive through this pandemic. We want to bring this pandemic to an end. And so what I would tell folks there is I'm with you. I understand the concern. The question you need to ask is, am I comfortable with what could happen if I were to get COVID, right? If I weren't protecting myself fully, am I comfortable with what can happen? And we've already lost too much life. We've already had, over 800,000 people who've died. The latest stats, there was a study that came out earlier this week. 1 million lives have been saved by the vaccines here in the United States alone. So think about the amount of loss of life we would have but for the vaccines. And so I think it's important to note the vaccines have a good effect. They've done a good job of preventing unnecessary loss of life, but there's still too many people dying. The people who aren't dying, right? You may say, I hear that, but I'm young, I'm healthy. The number of people who have long COVID symptoms, who've missed a lot of work because the ongoing fatigue or mind fog, and they had no idea they were going to be sick. You got college athletes, professional athletes who are just like, I'm just not back to what I'm used to. These are people who make their living off of their ability to be at their physical best. And so really, there are a lot of different impacts, and the number of people who are just devastated because they brought COVID home to a loved one. Again, you don't want to live with that. What you want to deal with, what you want to say is, do I have my highest level of protection? Is it within my ability to get that? And if so, how can I protect myself, my family, and my community, right? And that's the question we're all asking ourselves every day.
And the last question I have for you is, can you just give very clear directions on this whole booster thing? Because there have been some conflicting things. I think recently the CDC has said everybody should get boosters, but in some places people are still getting the message, no, it's only if you're high risk or whatever other situation. Should people be getting boosted right now? And what is the window that people should be looking at to where they would be getting boosted?
Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to clarify that. So the booster conversation has shifted over the last couple of weeks, in part because we've learned more and more from a scientific perspective, and now we have Omicron. So you want to know what the official recommendation is. From CDC's perspective, I want to be clear. If you are an adult in the United States and you had a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine more than 6 months ago, so you got the second shot more than 6 months ago, you need to get a booster today, immediately, right? Because that's the cutoff. So 6 months after that second shot, you should be getting a booster if you're an adult of any age. right? And then I think the conversation is we're continuing to get more information. I know 16 and 17-year-olds, that was just, moved forward a little bit. So I think there's progress on that front too. But remember, for even younger kids, they just started getting their vaccines. And so that's more recent. But I think the key takeaway is for adults, you should be getting boosted. It's going to give you your highest level of protection. And the why is that Omicron is we know that you have more protection. You're better situated to fight against Omicron or to be safe in the face of Omicron if you're boosted. And we want to not give the virus places to go. That's our goal, is to prevent that transmission, to prevent the folks getting sick, to prevent folks spreading COVID. So definitely get boosted. It's 6 months now. If it's Johnson & Johnson, the recommendation is to get boosted 2 months after that single shot. And now the recommendation is to get boosted with Pfizer or Moderna. They found that mix and match is actually very beneficial. To go from Johnson & Johnson to a one shot of that Pfizer or Moderna, you get a really good immune response. And so most of the folks who got J&J are getting boosted with those mRNA vaccines.
And just one last thing. So to clarify, there hasn't been a recommendation yet for people under 18. That's still we're still in that window where more than likely they're still trying to figure out if a booster shot's going to be needed for kids, right?
Well, for 16 and 17-year-olds, remember, for the Pfizer vaccine specifically, it was recommended for them earlier. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced with 16 and 17-year-old because it depends on which version you got. Okay. But that's why we say, if you want to make it as plain as can be, if you're an adult, make sure you get boosted if it's been more than 6 months. For kids, talk to your pediatrician, talk to your provider. They'll give you a sense of what vaccine you had and if it's time for a booster or not.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. Can you give people how they can keep up with you, the work that you're doing for the White House, or a particular White House website that you would recommend they follow?
Absolutely. I think there are a couple of places where you can keep track. If you want to get the best information, we keep it all, together at the wecandothis.hhs.gov. It's a great website with a ton of resources, especially if you're trying to share information with a family member or friend. Great tools there. There are a lot of other resources that I look to. The Kaiser Family Foundation has something called The Conversation, which has a bunch of different videos, incredibly helpful at explaining the common questions that people have. So really, I like to point people in that direction as well. For me personally, I think that, the best thing, follow me on Twitter. It's at Dr. Cameron Webb. There are lots of places where, so many of us are chiming in, talking about these issues. We just want to make sure we're getting the word out. There are so many good messengers out there about the way to stay safe in this pandemic. So really, at the end of the day, do everything you can to keep yourself, your families, and your community safe. Happy holidays to you all. Merry Christmas to you all. Stay safe during this holiday season. And thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Dr. Webb, and happy holidays to you.
All right. Take care.
You take care. All right, Clay Nation, we are going to take a break and then we will be right back. Welcome back to the Clay Kane Show. It's your girl, Reecie Colbert, filling in for Clay Kane. It has been a great show so far. We've had the fabulous Star Jones. We just had a very, very informative session with Dr. Cameron Webb on the Omicron variant. And now we are joined by Deidre DeJear. She is running for governor in Iowa. Let me give you a little bit of background on her. She founded her own firm almost 15 years ago to directly work with small businesses. Over the course of her career, Deidre has worked with over 1,000 businesses on developing growth strategy, marketing plans, and business planning. Her career began with helping companies after the Great Recession and has continued through the current pandemic. As a voting rights champion and community leader, Deidre previously ran for Secretary of State of Iowa in 2018 when she became the first Black woman to earn the Democratic nomination in a statewide race in Iowa. Originally from Mississippi, then Oklahoma, Deidre attended Drake University and never left the state she fell in love with and now calls home. While still a student, Deidre co-founded the nonprofit Back to School Iowa to support youth to continue in their educational endeavors. She served as a competitive coach for the East High girls basketball team and was with the team during their 2011 undefeated state championship run. That is so cool. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's another good day to do some good work, and I'm glad I get to come on and share with you and Clay about all the great things that are happening in Iowa right now and all the room for improvement as well.
Absolutely. So we actually came to know each other because you were the Iowa chair for Vice President, then Senator Harris's presidential campaign. So that's how we know each other. We go way back now at this point.
Yes, we door knocked together.
We door knocked together. Exactly. So I'm so thrilled that you are running for governor. I mean, I think 2022 has the potential to be the year of the Black woman. We have yourself, you're running in Iowa. Of course, everybody knows Stacey Abrams is down in Georgia. Mia McLeod is running for governor in South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, South Carolina. Then we have Val Demings running for Senate. We have in Florida, and then we have Sherry Beasley running for Senate in North Carolina. So Black women are really going to be stepping into the electoral spotlight. You're in a state that's not a Black state, though. So tell us a little bit about, I personally am of the mindset that Black women can get elected anywhere. We don't have to be in a state that is predominantly or even a plurality Black electorate. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what makes you the right fit for Iowa?
Like you said in my bio, I came to this stage to attend Drake and fell in love with it because there were just a litany of folks who surrounded themselves around me and created pathways of opportunity. And some of your listeners may have heard the term Iowa nice. And there's a lot of debate about what Iowa nice really is. And what I often tell people, what I believe Iowa nice is that Iowans, and I've come to know this, Iowans have this innate ability to see the humanity that exists in folks. And not only do they see that humanity, but they believe in it. And this state has done a lot. I always tell folks 100 years before Brown versus Board of Education, this state decided that every child, no matter their race, their gender, where they live, should have equal access to a quality education. They didn't get permission from anybody else. When folks were trying to worry about who was going to marry who, this state decided that you should marry who you choose. And so we've been a state for a long time that's been a leader, not only within what's happening in Iowa, but throughout this country. And this is also a state where a woman like me from Mississippi who meets a man from Oklahoma is able to run for Secretary of State and become the first African-American to be nominated for a statewide office. And so because this state has been so forward thinking, we've had some lapses in judgment in the past, but overall, we've done a lot of good work in Iowa. We feed the world, we fuel this nation, and I don't want folks to count Iowa out, because we've got a lot more stuff to do. And I'm the one that's going to lead us through a more prosperous future and lead us to be more of an imprint that we should be throughout this country.
So tell us a little bit about what your plans are. What's your platform that, you're pitching to the Iowa voters?
There's three big things that we're putting to the forefront. There are a number of issues that Iowans are facing, but the big critical issues are basic, fundamental. When Iowans are asking for access to education for K through 12 students so that when they graduate from high school, they're prepared for not only college, but a job, if that's the path that they choose to take, that's reasonable. But right now, our education system isn't doing that. In fact, our education is taking a few steps back. We've got superintendents teaching class right now. We've got high schools that are closing because of the worker shortage. Our teachers are leaving and going to other states around us. And we've got to recoup, because this state was once number one in education. If anybody's ever taken the Iowa Basic Skills Test, this is Iowa, right? And so we got to step back into leadership there and make sure that we're not only preparing our students for success, but we're also doing our work that we need to do for this country. The other thing is the economy. Everybody throughout this country is facing worker shortages and has wage gaps and has skills gaps. This state needs a comprehensive economic development plan. We're a big agricultural state, but we also have a number of small businesses throughout this state. Our small businesses provide jobs for more than 50% of the workforce. I'm going to strengthen our small business infrastructure, and I'm also going to make sure that we have a strong economic plan that can put people back to work. And I don't want people working 3 jobs. I don't want people working 4 jobs. I want them to work 1 job. So that they can provide for their families, put food on the table, and put a roof over their head. And that's reasonable. And then the last thing that I would say is mental health care. Our prisons are becoming quasi mental health care facilities, and that's not what they're intended to do. Our police officers are becoming quasi mental health care practitioners, and that's not what they're intended to do. Our students are getting records while they're in middle school and high school in the framework of a classroom. Disorderly conduct. Of course, they're disorderly. They're children, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to restore mental health care in this state. For some time we've been taking away funding. Our state has taken away beds, and it has done no good for us. 2020 did a number on our mental health care or on our mental in general as individuals, and this state has to stand up and make sure that we're providing for the people within our state, providing those provisions and upskilling mental health care resources for the good of everybody. And those are the big three things, but there's so many things that we can do. And again, these are basics, but unfortunately we have a Republican governor who is really taking her notes from a nationalized message. That's no good in Iowa. Voter restrictions, worried about what bathroom people go to, tax cuts, have education issues. And so we've got to make an adjustment, and we can do that in Iowa.
So this is a national audience, and we know that in, many candidates now, to be successful, they really do need support coming from without of their state. We know that I can fully expect that Stacey Abrams, for instance, is going to get a lot of support. Why should this national audience be invested in your particular race, as well as some of the other ones that people have their eye on?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And again, I'm going to go back to the fact that Iowa is a leader in a number of spaces in ag. For folks who don't know, all of the turkey that's produced in Subway comes out of the state of Iowa. We are one of the number one pork producers, number one egg producers. And we know that we are having challenges not only related to the supply chain, but getting food to people's tables. And so we want to continue to uplift states like Iowa, states like mine, so that we can continue to be those producers for the state, because we're not getting any more land out of this country. And so we've got to make sure the land that we have, we're using it, we're treating it the way that it needs to be treated, but we're also producing. Another thing that's incredibly important in this state is that we have a number of private colleges and universities where students all over the country are coming to Iowa to learn and to get a solid education. And we want to make sure that when those students are coming from throughout the country, that their values are adhered to, that we're taking into consideration those students' lived experiences and professional experiences, so that they have a decent time while they're in the state of Iowa, that they learn and they can go back home and do whatever they'd like to do to contribute to their communities. This is a state that's hard to miss in a lot of spaces. At one point it was a flyover, but not anymore. We also fuel this country. When we think about alternative energy and things along those lines, Iowa plays an important role in that. And so I want this country to know, and your listeners to know, that you may not see our name on every piece of thing that you receive or you see in the stores and things of that nature, but somehow or another, Iowa has something to do with things that are coming off the shelves. Iowa has something to do with the machines that you see out in fields and things of that nature. And we want to make sure that this state continues to grow.
Wow, that is a lot of really good information. And I've been hearing a lot of disgruntled Black folks about the cost of bacon going up. So if you get pledged to bring the cost of bacon down, you definitely got some support coming from outside of the country.
We've got meatpacking plants that need workers.
Yeah.
And we've got farms that need people on them, right? The same type of workforce shortage that you might see at the mall or at a restaurant, we're experiencing that too. But needless to say, the challenge right now is that we have leadership who has a megaphone right now, and her message is not welcoming. Talks about troubles with immigration, and rather than coming to terms with the challenges of immigration we're dealing with in the state, she goes to Texas. In fact, she sends our highway patrol folks to Texas. And that's not a good message that we need to send out to this country to be a welcoming state. We want to welcome people to the state, but we also want to keep people here too. And leadership plays an important part of ensuring that happens.
Absolutely. Callers, if you have a question for Deidre, call in 866-801-8255. I love how you bring up just the interconnectedness between Iowa and other parts. The supply chain is something that's been making a lot of news. There's been a lot of progress on that. But I also want to touch on when you talked about your opponent. We know we talked a little bit about earlier in the show about the challenges that Vice President Kamala Harris is facing as a Black woman in particular, the headwinds against her. You know that being her Iowa campaign chair. Do you see any of that kind of stuff in terms of maybe the tenor of the coverage or maybe the erasure of the coverage? How do you think you're faring in terms of how your campaign is being covered in your home state or even in the national media?
You know, I think my run is taking quite a folks in the media, taking them by surprise. But needless to say, when we show up and we let them know that we're going to be in our communities, they show up. And that means the world to me. When I started this campaign, I'm of the mindset that going back to VP Harris, for the people, that is what I believe in. Yeah. And if I intend on leading the people, it's incredibly important from my vantage point that I'm with the people. That's what I've done my entire career. That's what I'm going to continue to do, not only in this campaign, but as governor. And so we had conversations from throughout the entire state. And people had a lot of great things to say about their communities. But what I love more so than anything is that the press came and told those stories. They told the story about what people loved about their communities, because we had to start with the good first. I asked them 2 questions. Why do you live here? Why don't you live anywhere else in the state? Why don't you live anywhere else in this country? And people believed in their communities. They loved their neighbors. They loved the fact that they could go to the grocery store for one thing, but stay there for 2 hours because they knew too many people. That was great. And I loved to hear it. But they also talked about their challenges. Mm-hmm. They also talked about where they saw a need for improvement, talking about mental health care, education, climate change, and things of that nature. And the press published those stories. Do I want more coverage? Absolutely. Anytime I'm anywhere, everywhere, I want people to be able to hear what's going on in those spaces. But I'm proud that the press has shown up thus far. And it's to the benefit of not only me, but to the benefit of the people to hear what other people are saying. So I'm happy not to have, had that stumbling block thus far.
Good. Okay. And the last question I have for you is funding. We know that traditionally Black women candidates are not funded as well as other candidates, even though we saw, like, for instance, with Vice President Kamala Harris, when she was added to the ticket, she ushered in a record amount of fundraising. But generally speaking, Black women do tend to be underfunded. Are you getting what you need for your campaign? And if not, how can the Clay Cane audience or anybody who wants to support your candidacy help change that?
We need resources. You talk about comms. I want to strengthen our comms department to make sure that we're getting out there everywhere we need to be related to media. And so if anybody is willing to contribute to our cause, I am not an independently wealthy individual. So I couldn't write a check, right? I'm a small business owner who works with other small businesses. And as a means of sacrifice, because this state means so much to me, I closed the books on my company as of right now, because this race is that important. This is my 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job, running for office in this state. And so if people can help contribute to our campaign, go to DeJearforIowa.com. We need resources because we can win this. The path for me is clear. And it's a strong one. Hopping into this race, it wasn't about taking a step stool and trying to advance. I'm running in this race because we can be the next governor of Iowa, but we need the resources to make this thing happen. We've been doing a great job raising money so far. We've been getting good endorsements, but we need more. I want it to be better.
Okay. And spell out DeJear for the audience.
DeJear. DeJear for Iowa.com.
Right. I am rooting for you, girl. You know I am. I appreciate you for joining us on the show. We're going to tweet out your information so that everybody can support you and get on board. We got a lot of Black women to support. It don't have to just be one. Don't have to just be one big name. We can get behind all of the really extraordinary Black women like Deidre DeJear for Iowa governor. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy you were able to bring me on. I just want folks to know that Black people Black women can represent more than Black women.
Oh, that's true.
Represent everybody. And it's very important that we keep that at bay because some folks need to be reminded of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Black women are electable, and when Black women are in positions of power, everybody benefits. The government is more fair, it's more equitable, and it just makes the world a better place. And drop your Twitter handle for people as well.
Deidre DeJear. Two funny sounding first names. Deidre DeJear. DeJear. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Snapchat. I'm on TikTok, Facebook. Please find us. Learn more about what we're doing. Something special is happening in Iowa. And if you're listening, I would love for you to be a part of it because it means the world to me and it means the world to the cause.
Thank you so much. And you have a good holidays.
You too.
All right. Take care. All right, y'all. We're going to go to a few calls. Rodney, what's up? How you doing from North Carolina?
Hey, Reecie, how you doing? I love everything that you do. And thank you for all the advocacy you do for us.
Thank you.
My comment is I get a little irritated sometimes when they talk about Kamala Harris not being out front, and I use Urban View as my main source of news, and I use my filter when I listen to the other news agencies. But Joe Madison had Kamala Harris a clip where she was put ahead of to get the Voting Rights Act passed, but I heard it nowhere else. The media is just not showing her. Al Sharpton had Kamala Harris at a few events. I didn't see it in the news, but I heard it from him. So people say that they don't see her, but I think she's out there and she's doing things, but she's just not given the light as maybe the president. And that's my comment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's quantitative evidence of this. She's done 500 events, maybe let's say 100 or so of those have been private, but she's done over 300 public events. And I know because I've gone through the list and filtered out each one. And so she's definitely very present. It's not a matter of her being out there. It's a matter of people paying attention. And unfortunately, we really do live in an environment where people are just constantly enthralled with gossip and the petty, and that's what sells. And unfortunately, I do think that although there is an audience that is looking for the positive and the substantive, the mainstream media and the people that really have the clout they're not going that route. And so to the point that I made earlier, it's really incumbent upon us to make sure that we're interacting with the things that we see that she's in, whether it's her page, whether it's a news article or whatever the case may be, so that we continue to see those things. And it's incumbent upon us to actually seek them out a little bit. So thank you, Rodney. And here's the other thing that I always like to remind people, because I was on Karen Hunter the other day, and I stated, I gave some suggestions, but what I did state at the end of that was, look, even if Vice President Kamala Harris didn't do anything different, she's still better than any other vice president that we've had. Just point blank period, already 11 months in, because of the portfolio that she's taken on. I mean, she's volunteered for some really tough assignments. She could have shied away from voting rights, especially knowing how big of a shit show it is in Congress. She could have been like, I don't want to have nothing to do with that because I don't think it's going to pass. And so now keep me away from that. Let me be over here. But no, she has taken it upon herself. She's met with activists around the country. She's had Black women organizers, some of which who were arrested protesting at the Capitol. And then the very next day she had them at the White House. So one thing she said recently was, if it's easy, it won't make it to my desk. And that is just really, really, really that's just really important to recognize that, the vice president isn't giving easy wins, because if it's an easy win, why would she even be involved? So thank you, Rodney, for your call. One thing before I go back to my dad, and you guys can call in too. We have a couple more minutes left, 866-801-8255. Bell Hooks passed away. And rightfully so. She's being celebrated, and people are revisiting and reflecting on some of her famous quotes. And, as it relates to this Vice President Kamala Harris discussion, a quote that really stood out to me is sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. So I just want y'all to marinate on that. They see it and they don't want it to exist. And what I want Black people, especially Clay Kane listeners, especially to understand, this is not a uniquely, they don't want Kamala Harris to exist because she's Kamala Harris, because they don't like her laugh, because she's, Black and Indian, because she's this and the other. They don't want it to exist because she is powerful. And what her power represents is a turning of the page, is a new possibility that has never been. And so it's not about taking her out because of her unique, her being uniquely dislikable, for instance. Okay. It's about taking her out because if you stop VP Kamala Harris, then you stop women from being VP. You for damn sure stop her from being president. Anybody who has illusions, or I should say delusions, that, okay, well, yeah, they took out Hillary and yeah, they took out Kamala, but my girl is going to be different. No, that's not what this is about. This is about taking out women from these positions of power going forward. They say, well, shit, they didn't want to vote for the woman to be president. Well, look at what happened when we had a woman vice president. I think maybe we shouldn't go there anymore. That's what they want people to take away from it. So anybody who thinks that this is a Kamala Harris issue, no, this is a woman issue. And it's also a Black issue. Because we had Obama and you had the white lash to Obama with Trump. Now we have VP and you have a backlash to her. It is on us to say, y'all can be mad, but y'all gonna get over it. Because we're going to continue to harness our power. We're going to continue to stand in our power. That's on us to do. If we run scared, well, I don't know, white people ain't gonna let this, white people ain't gonna let that, all these people gonna be mad, then we can't be sitting up here mad when the government ain't working for us. We can't sit up there and be mad when the people aren't doing what we want them to do. People get mad at Kamala. I say, well, listen, hold on. I remember a lot of y'all said to take a white man to be the white man, and y'all voted for Joe Biden to be the nominee. He had enough sense to pick VP, but be clear, it's not VP's presidency, it's her vice presidency. If we went all in with VP, we have a different presidency right now, but we didn't. We got her as VP, and I'm grateful for that. But we cannot be deterred because of attacks. Because let me go back to the quote again. Sometimes people try to destroy you. This is bell hooks, precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. She is not being attacked because she is weak, because she is ineffective. She is being attacked because she is powerful, and they don't want that power to exist in the hands of a Black person or a woman ever again. All right. I'm gonna go back to the line. We got a couple more minutes of, hey, Pops, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. What you got to say?
You've been having a monster show.
Thank you.
To answer your question, well, I'm sad that Cameron Webb didn't get to win his congressional seat because Virginia did a really injustice to themselves by not sending him as a representative. I know he was great, wasn't he? Oh my goodness! And your Deidre DeJear. I mean, I didn't know that much about her, but she really speaks well for herself. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely going to send some money to her campaign. But as far as the Democrats are concerned, Reece, if you get in the room with these people, their messaging sucks, period. All right? They talk about all these bills, these things that they want to pass, but nobody knows what the hell's in it and how it's going to benefit. And to go to Texas specifically, because they have Beto O'Rourke
4 minutes left
for governor, and Matthew Dowd, who is a former Republican, he's a really crafty person. Mm-hmm. So there's a chance that they can wrestle that governorship and the lieutenant governorship, which is the most powerful office in Texas, away from the Republicans. But The roadblock to that is the Spanish-speaking people, and I found this all across the country. The Spanish-speaking people are the lowest of the vaccinated people. They will not wear a mask, not in Massachusetts, not in New York, not in Florida, not in Texas, not in California. And the male Spanish-speaking person is a Republican. So they're voting against their own interests if they vote, period. So they have to find a way to message. Well, my advice, forget about them. Deal with the percentages of Asians that you can get.
3 minutes.
Increase the percentages of Black men that vote.
Yeah.
North Carolina is going to be critical, definitely. Pennsylvania is going to be critical. So if Malcolm doesn't win, you still got to support whether Connor Lamb or the racist dude. You got to wrestle that seat away from the Republicans.
I agree. We have a lot of work to do, and I agree with you. We got to double down on the base. But Pop's got to go. Got one last call, and I got to run out of here. So thank you for calling in. Everybody got Papa Carl. He was on PG today. He wasn't on PG-13, but next time we're going to give more turn to Papa Carl, okay? All right, Dave in Virginia, 30 seconds, please. What's your comment?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing, Reecie? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. I call in the Clay Show a lot, first time talking to you, but I just wanted to make this real quick. I did have a comment for your guest because I'm from Virginia, and I saw what happened to McAuliffe voted for him. They took one of his comments and they blew it out of context. Of course, and that's all you have to do is blow a comment out of context. It was a comment about parents and school board, or schools. The parents shouldn't have a say in school, and that's not what he meant.
Yeah,
he meant something completely different. But anyway, you're the gubernatorial candidate. She mentioned that kids, like the kids, they're going to be disorderly. I just didn't want her to say that because all they have to do is show a picture. It doesn't have to be in her own state of some kids wilding in class, and then they'll play that back with her saying, "Oh, kids are supposed to be disorderly," and they're going to blow her whole thing out of context because that's not what she meant.
Right.
I heard what you said. It's definitely not what she meant.
Yeah.
She's just saying, hey, kids sometimes they're going to do some simple things out of, but not like, what they will show to blow it out of context.
That's a good point. Sometimes Democrats, it seems harmless in the moment, but there is a whole machine that knows how to weaponize Democratic, comments. And so that's certainly something for her to maybe recalibrate that particular message. So thank you, Dave, for calling in.
1 minute.
Great weekend.
All right, y'all. Look, it has been wonderful being here with y'all. Y'all know me already, but just in case you don't, you can follow me at Reecie Colbert, REECIE Colbert, COLBERT, or Black Women Views on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'll be back next week. Clay will be back on Monday, I presume. So I appreciate you all. Thank you to Star Jones. Thank you to Deidre DeJear. Thank you to Dr. Cameron Webb. And y'all have a wonderful weekend, Clay Nation.